Hello, I'm Tony Guida. This is My New York. Estimates vary, but it is likely that more than 750,000 Muslims live in the metropolitan area. Like any society, the Muslim community is divided by political and religious differences, but it is united against a common enemy, the acts of covert racism and overt violence perpetrated against them. My guest today has much to say about the toxic atmosphere enveloping Muslim Americans. He is Salaam Bhatti, a Queens lawyer and the national spokesman for the Ahmadiyya Muslim Community in the United States, and you will meet him next. We are joined by Salaam Bhatti, and I'm happy to have you with us today. I think we should start by telling people what the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is.
Sure, thanks for having us here today, Tony. It's an honor and a privilege. So the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, real briefly, is a Muslim community that believes in the Messiah, Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, India. And we believe he came to revive Islam, to spread the truth about religious teachings, and to unite humanity under that truth. And he did this through publishing over 80 books, writing thousands of letters to public officials and private citizens, and giving numerous lectures about what Islam actually is teaching.
My understanding of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is the by far the tiniest sect in Islam. I guess Sunnis are the majority, probably, 75% of Muslims are Sunni, and then there's Shia.
So there are primarily two major Muslim communities. There's the Sunni and the Shia sects. And they both have numerous communities underneath them, which leads to over 70 sects being within Islam. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is the largest single sect, which is led by one unified leader.
Salaam, let's talk about what some people call radical Islam.
Honestly, there is no such thing as radical Islam.
Yeah, what word would you use, or what term would you use?
There are Muslims who are radicals.
Okay.
So there are Muslims who are radicals because there's nothing in Islamic teaching that promotes radicalism. In fact, Prophet Muhammad has said that do not go into extremes, and that the middle way is the best way. So what we do is we teach kids from a very young age, from like age 6, 7, in weekly classes in our mosque, what Islam's teachings actually are. You know, that you should be loyal to your country of residence, you need to engage in community service. And Islam isn't a religion where you have to convert by the sword or, you go to hell. Islam is a religion that believes in freedom of conscience for everybody.
Where are these Muslims who are radicals finding the underpinning for what they believe? Because they seem to believe, by the stories we see of these terrorist acts, that they're doing this for Allah.
It's really a geopolitical movement that's come about as a result of greed. There's a failure in Muslim leadership, which has resulted in these clerics going into radicalization, doing it for money and for land. And you see this across the board, whether it's in politics or other religions or no religion as well. So what they're doing is they're using the correct buzzwords like jihad and you have to wage a holy war and this thing to attract these disaffected youth who don't really know anything about Islam, and bringing them over so that they can compensate for their past misgivings. And thus this leads to an idea that Islam teaches anything radical. So it's really a geopolitical thing that's been going on. ISIS and all these other groups, as long as we cut their funding, they're going to be gone because they have no spiritual reasons to exist.
You talked about differences, or I've seen you write, or at least on the website of your community, it's written that inconsistent messages from Muslim leadership have created increased risk of extremism and radicalism. Talk more about that. What are these inconsistent messages?
So they'll say one thing in the public, and then they'll say something different in private.
Who's they?
They being Muslim leaders. And in one message, they'll show a happy face to the public, and in the private messages within their mosques or homes, they'll say something completely different. Now, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, who's the Khalifa of Islam, the spiritual leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, which is spread all over the world in over 200 nations, tens of millions of members. He's had this consistent message that there needs to be justice on every single level of society for there to be a path to peace. Now, with this consistent message of over the past 10 years, we have this progress going on within the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and we invite everybody, Muslim and non-Muslim, to join us in this quest for justice on every level.
Are you perhaps concerned that you're preaching to a very small choir because, as I was alluding to earlier, the Ahmadiyya sect is perhaps 1-2% of the Muslim world. So, how much heard is your voice, the community's voice?
So regarding percentages, America is about 7% of the world population, but we see how influential America is. Now, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, people can say that it's only a small percentage of the greater Muslim community,
right.
But we are the largest Muslim community under one leader. And through that, we've been able to spread to over 200 nations with this consistent message that there's a freedom of religion in Islam, and we're teaching this as well as 10 other points through our True Islam campaign. Now, the True Islam campaign launched in December 2015 after the San Bernardino massacre. President Obama spoke from the Oval Office and called for, Muslims to unite against extremism. A lot of Muslims didn't like that rhetoric, but we said, listen, there is a problem within Muslims today because there is failure in Muslim leadership. So we have this True Islam campaign that you can see at trueislam.com that says these are what Islam's teachings actually are. Islam teaches women's rights. Islam teaches freedom of religion for everybody. Islam teaches that you can get into heaven and you don't have to be a Muslim. So these teachings have resulted in nearly 8,000 Muslims and non-Muslims across the country to endorse these points as Muslim allies. And additionally, our social media presence is over 50,000 people strong now too. So there's an active conversation going on, even here in America.
And what does this campaign, True Islam campaign, have to say about terrorist acts, if it has anything to say at all about them?
So one of our points in the True Islam campaign is that Islam forbids and condemns and prohibits all types of terrorism. In fact, in the Quran itself, it says that persecution is worse than murder.
Why is that message not so well understood by Americans who look at Muslims with doubt and in some cases with fear?
It's easy to spread a half-truth or a lie in a tweet or in a simple line message, but it takes a paragraph to respond to that, and people are already so caught up in that lie that they don't really care about the truth. So what we have had to do is start a grassroots effort under the True Islam campaign called Coffee, Cake, and True Islam, where we have this intimate gathering, whether it's at a mosque or at a coffee shop, of Muslims who may not know enough about Islam and non-Muslims who may not know about Islam, and have them come to our mosque. We provide the coffee and the cake, and they can ask whatever questions they want. It's a very intimate gathering so that they can ask any question freely, so that they don't get embarrassed. We have questions as simple as, what's a Muslim? To things as complex as, tell me about women's rights. So it's really leading a conversation in over 50 chapters across the country.
Getting back to these, what you call inconsistent messages from leaders of the Muslim community, is there any effort, how might you describe the efforts within the Muslim community to sort of organize or unify those messages, or is that just not possible because people believe such different things?
So one of our points in the True Islam campaign is loyalty to your country of residence. The inconsistent message we've seen is that there are Muslims who are being taught that you can't vote in American elections because that's not a part of Islam. And this...
They're being taught they can't vote, they shouldn't vote, or that it's against United States laws for them to vote? I'm not sure.
They're taught that it's against Islam for them to vote in American elections.
I see.
So this is a very terrible teaching because Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, himself said that you need to be loyal to your country of residence. And if you are benefiting from the goodness of a nation, then you should add to that goodness as well. So if you are willfully not voting in American elections, then you're not doing any good. You need to be a part of your community, and that includes both religious and political.
The Muslim extremism is a very thorny issue from many perspectives, one of which is political. You have the Saudis, who promote mostly a form of Islam, Wahhabism, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is a fiercely, as I understand it, a fiercely fundamental view of Islam. And yet the Saudis are one of our allies, are one of our supposedly great allies. That's complicated.
It's very complicated. Now, Wahhabism is something that's come about in the past century, and it's something easily conflated with Islam. But we have to be mindful in that we shouldn't conflate nations with something that's a 1,400-year-old faith. Now, what Saudi is doing, and what a lot of these Muslim majority nations are doing, is completely against Islamic teachings. It's a lot of cultural practices that have crept in, and they think that this is Islam because that's what their parents used to do. So it's a very unfortunate case of women being denied their rights. And now this is something as simple as they can't even drive a car, whereas Prophet Muhammad said that do not bury your infant daughter just because she was born a girl, because this was something that was a practice during those pre-Islamic times. And now we're seeing this denigration of women's rights in Saudi, which could very well lead to people not wanting daughters again.
There was a statement made in, I want to quote it to you, and it uses the term radical Islam in the quote. And as you said before, many Muslims, including you, don't like that term, and I can see why. There are Muslims who are radical is different from saying that Islam is radical. Right. But anyway, this quote, radical Islam is anti-woman, anti-gay, and anti-American. Would you agree with that?
So these teachings that people ascribe to Islam, agreed. Yeah, those are totally against America. That's against rational discourse.
Would it surprise you to know that the person who said that is Donald Trump?
No.
It wouldn't surprise you that he said radical Islam is anti-woman, anti-gay, and anti-American, something you agree with. It doesn't surprise you that he was the author of that quote?
No, President Trump has said a lot of things that could fit both sides of any issue, really. And we do realize now the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is purely a spiritual community. We don't have political affiliations. But we do understand that there were things President Trump said during the campaign that could vilify Muslims. Could
vilify Muslims? I think, Salaam, you're being kind. And of course, President Trump doubled down on those comments from the campaign. His first week in office, he signs an executive order banning entry into this country of people from 7 Muslim majority countries. What did you think of that? What was the reaction in your community?
Well, this executive order was definitely, unjustified and based on ignorance. We've talked about how 62% of Americans don't know a Muslim. And as a result of this ignorance and this fear and this hatred, we're seeing a lot of people supporting this executive order, which is just something that's going to divide people. The Khalifa of Islam, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, said that, the world is becoming an interconnected village. And such an executive order will only seek to divide people and not unite people.
The title of the order, which I guess you know, was Protecting the Nation from Foreign Terrorist Entry into the United States. It seems obviously conflating Muslim with terrorism.
And that's why we come back to the whole term of radical Islam. There's no such thing as radical Islam because there's nothing in Islamic teaching that can promote radicalism. It's really a geopolitical thing that's happening that we really need to focus on.
To my knowledge, there have been no acts of terrorism or attempted acts of terrorism in this country by anyone from any of those 7 countries. Do you understand why he chose those 7 countries? Why those 7 countries?
There's a lot of speculation as to why. Some say it's because those nations don't cooperate with our immigration officials here, so there's no back and forth background information being transferred. Some say it's because Trump doesn't have properties there, which is why they're being banned. So there's a lot of conspiracy theories and rumors. Ultimately, we don't really know. But what we do know is that it's caused a lot of discord right here in our country.
Well, I want to talk about the discord. Right after I note that it was Saudi Arabia, or it was Saudi Arabians, 16 of them, I believe, were among the 19 hijackers of planes who flew those planes into the World Trade Center back in 2001. Saudi Arabia is not on the list.
And we do know that the Wahhabism has a connection with extremists. We have Al-Qaeda and the Taliban who come from these different interpretations of Islam, which is really just a complete nullification of Islam in and of itself. But this is what they believe. So Wahhabism is one of the problems and one of the issues we need to deal with as well.
Let's talk about the discord you mentioned. You're a lawyer in Queens, active in your community, and some of the work you do is immigration work. Tell us about the discord. What's going on?
Well, I mean, we saw what happened at JFK with the refugees, immigrants trying to come in, and we had protests going on, and then we had attorneys coming from all over the state to come help out. And, this is probably my proudest moment of my legal career so far, is going there and serving a 12-hour pro bono shift and helping these refugees and immigrants out who have been detained. And let me tell you, Tony, the cohesion that we had, whether we were solo practitioners or big law people, we were all working together for the greater good of mankind. And I've never been more proud to be an attorney.
Take us a little deeper into what you're hearing, what's going on with your clients or the people in the community, the Muslims, your friends. How much anxiety is there? We should point out, of course, at this point that the federal court stopped the executive order, but and apparently the Trump administration isn't going to fight that, but is going to come back with a revised one, which at least at this time, as we're talking, it hasn't done yet. But what kind of anxiety? What stories are you hearing? What's going on?
Well, there's about 3 to 5 million Muslims in America, and many of them are immigrants. And many of them come from Southeast Asia, parts of Africa, and parts of the Middle East, which is being targeted here. So a lot of calls are coming in saying, can my parents come back after spending 6 months abroad? Can I cross the Canadian border because people have spouses or children in Canada? And a lot of anxiety is there, but we're letting them know that, listen, you're going to be okay. The ban has been stopped by the courts. So, but we're also cautioning them that if you don't have to travel within the next 3 months while things are, clarifying themselves, don't travel.
And when you say you're going to be okay, do you say that with a lot of confidence, or do you wonder?
It's a day-by-day basis, it's a day-by-day basis. We tell them, for today, for what we know, you're okay. But things might change overnight because that's what we're seeing, that these things, these executive orders, are coming out of nowhere.
Is there any word other to describe this but racism?
Racism, prejudice, it could be a lot of things. Ignorance really is what strikes me. But what we do have are efforts to meet with our political leaders. Just in the past couple of weeks, over 100 Muslims from across the nation visited Capitol Hill, and I was one of them, to meet with our politicians, our representatives, our senators, and to talk to them about what's going on in America right now, how it feels to be a Muslim, but not complaining, how we can benefit America, how we can benefit our local societies through blood drives, through more community programs, and we are here at your service. So let us know how we can help. And we had over 200 meetings on the Hill that day.
It sounds very constructive. If I were a Muslim, Salaam, I'd be afraid. Are you afraid?
I'm not afraid.
Friends afraid?
I'm not afraid. Tony, with people like you and people like me in this country, we have no reason to be afraid. As one of our great presidents said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. President Trump may or may not believe the things he says, but his base does. And what we also know is Pew Research reported that 60% of Americans don't know a Muslim. So this ignorance leads to fear, and this fear leads to hatred, and this hatred leads to acts against Muslims, which is why it comes back down to people need to meet a Muslim. And what Muslims in America have done is become too insular. So we need to be able to open the doors to our mosques even wider than ever and invite people to, see what happens inside a mosque. We have nothing to hide. Come on by, check out what's going on during Friday prayer. You can observe any of our 5 daily prayers as well. And we'd love to even have coffee and cake with you inside of our mosques too. Open invite to President Trump as well.
Admirable sentiment. Open the doors to the mosque and, come meet us. There are communities, though, some here in the metropolitan area that don't even want a mosque. And there's a township in New Jersey, Bernard's Township, which continues to be the site of a long-standing battle over a mosque that the Muslims there want to build. And what I found fascinating about this story is that the man, Muhammad Ali Chowdhury, was mayor of this community at one point. He had lived in Bernard's Township for 40 years. He was on the school board. He's a respected member of the community, and he has always wanted to be able to pray in his own town and build a mosque, and yet he and his fellow Muslims have been stymied time and time again. No, you can't build it for zoning reasons, for this reason, for that reason. All of them apparently nonsense, or at least that's what the federal government says, because now the federal government is suing Bernard's Township, arguing that its decision to prohibit the mosque violated federal law. When you see something like that, what does that make you think about? You know, you're just talking now about Muslims need to do better outreach, but some of those seeds are falling on unfertile ground.
Yeah, so in Islam, it's just like in other religions, kindness to your neighbors is paramount in its teachings of how you treat your neighbors. And when it comes to building a mosque in a new area where they might not have a lot of Muslim interaction, it's time that they go in and have, community events. Have a Meet a Muslim Day or something, or have a blood drive and invite people to give.
Well, yeah, if you have a mosque, and here's a town that would like to have one, at least the Muslims in that town would like to have one, and so far over, I don't know, years this has been going on. They've been stymied. It doesn't seem like there's a welcoming atmosphere. It seems like there's, what struck me out about this is that the man whose principal advocate for this, for the mosque, is somebody that same town elected as mayor at one point. Mm-hmm. And yet there's a gulf there.
Well, I mean, as we've learned, the popular vote doesn't necessarily always matter. So there are people who might have negative sentiments against Muslims. Now, you might not have a mosque or a prayer center in that area, but Muslims should still do some sort of outreach in that community so that when they do want to open a mosque, maybe a few months down the line, they've warmed up the ground there.
Uh-huh. So you're saying that a large part of this is improving relationship is on the Muslim community itself.
Yes.
What about the non-Muslim community? What do we need to be doing that we're not doing to bridge the gap of fear and divisiveness?
One of the things that's always great is having more interfaith programs. And sometimes it's as simple as, Googling a mosque and finding there's one maybe a block or two away from you and inviting them over to your house of worship, or even asking them if you can visit their house of worship. So as long as we get these crossroads happening, we can have a better community. And all politics is local. So it's very important that we get those neighborhoods meshed well together.
Have you or your family experienced any what you might call discrimination or unfriendly acts or whatever else? Have you had any personal experience with that?
Over the summer in last year, 2016, while I was leaving my mosque with a 10-year-old friend of mine, there was a white SUV that slowed down while I was exiting. Its window came down slowly, and I kind of froze in my tracks thinking, a gun is going to come out. But instead, the person yelled an expletive and yelled terrorist after that. So in all my years of being a Muslim, I've never experienced this, especially in Queens, which is so diverse, where there's a mosque on every other corner.
I don't think there's a more diverse borough in New York than Queens. Screamed an epithet at you and the word and terrorist.
Yep.
You're a family man. I mean, married, have children?
Married, no kids.
No kids. Okay. Well, nonetheless, that's got to be a scary moment.
But see, the thing is these types of incidents are occurring all throughout the nation, reported or unreported. But what some Muslims who are not, firm with their faith, they might retreat. They might distance themselves from their faith, or they might even try to overcompensate and go into extremes and agree with what ISIS is teaching and say, you know what, ISIS is right. America is at war with Islam, so I need to fight back. And I could have retreated and just said, you know what, I'm an advocate for Islam here in America. I'm going to just stop because it's not working with this guy. But I said, no, we need to keep going. We need to open the doors to our mosques even wider, and we need to keep fighting this fight on the ground level.
So that's how, if you had the opportunity, if he were in this studio now, without a gun, we hope, that's how you'd reach, or try to reach out.
Yeah, if I had another 2 seconds with him, I said, hey, we have a coffee cake session on Thursday, come by, and let's build a bridge between us.
Now you're
and Tony, I don't say that lightly, because in November of 2015, our mosque in Connecticut was shot at by our neighbor. He shot several high-powered shots at the mosque.
Where was this?
In Connecticut.
Right.
And we could have easily locked the doors to our mosque, but I spent a week there. We opened the doors to the mosque to the whole community. We had open mosque events. There were people who are neighbors who didn't even know a mosque was there until this news broke. And so as a result of that, we had a better relationship with the whole community. And on top of that, we forgave the shooter.
Uh-huh.
He became a friend of our mosque. He speaks at our mosque. He comes to our events, and we're able to, move forward together. So to the person who was in that SUV, I'm not here to fight you. I want to have a discussion with you.
Right. And for people who've been watching us, in all the points that you've made, they want to know more, go where? True Islam, what's the website?
Yeah, trueislam.com is a great start. There is this idea of being a Muslim ally. And if you're not a Muslim and you want to know how you can support your fellow Muslim Americans, become a hashtag Muslim ally and sign up at trueislam.com.
Salaam Bhatti, it's a pleasure to have you and here today, and instructive, educational, and I hope the message is heard by many, many people.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.